This video is to show you how to add a single square between two existing squares. So this yellow square has been knitted by picking up stitches from the right hand orange square and the left hand orange square. So I've got a piece already partly worked. I now need to place a square in this space. So I've added one square to the right hand edge of the first square, a second square to the left hand edge of the first square, and now I want to put a square into this space. So when you're working a square between two existing squares, you are picking up stitches down the left hand side of one square and up the right hand side of the other square, picking up one stitch for each chain. So you're working with a needle in your right hand and holding the knitting in your left hand. So we start at the point of the right hand square and go under that little top chain, so you must make sure that you get under there. Take the yarn around and pull a loop through, and then I'm going through the fabric under the chain to pick up my next stitch, and I'm going to weave in my yarns, my tail ends, as I go. So I work the next stitch, I'm going to pick up under the chains for the next stitch, lift the yarn over the point so I can weave it in, take the yarn around and pull through into the next stitch and hold the yarn down this time. In fact, I'm going to go back slightly because I split that stitch slightly. So we go through the fabric, keep the stitches down because last time I had them up, up, down. Let me just get hold of my knitting again. So this one, and we're going in there, and I'm keeping it down at the back, pull the yarn through, go through under the next chain, lift the yarns up, take my yarn around and take the stitch through into the next stitch, keeping the yarns at the back down. So if you can learn to weave in as you're picking up stitches, it just makes the job of neatening at the end much easier. So I've got one more stitch to pick up at the bottom of this square, so I should now have 11 stitches. So I'm now going to pick up, so we're going to jump across the middle here, and I'm going to pick up 11 stitches through the chains up this edge here. So again, I'm going to the first of the light blue chains on this side, and this time I don't have any yarns to weave in because they were woven in when I worked the previous square. So up this edge there's no need for me to weave any stitches in, any tail ends in. I'm simply picking up one stitch for each chain up the edge of the square. And at the top here, that's the chain, so I can either go through both like that, or just the front chain at the top here. It doesn't matter which you do as long as you're consistent throughout the piece that you're making. So I've now picked up 22 stitches. I'll just check. 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. It's always worth checking. So we've got 22 stitches, which is the number we need to knit the square. And now I'm going to start on row 2 of the pattern. So the pick-up row is row 1 of the pattern, and this is row 2 of the pattern. So it's knit 1 through the back loop, knit to 1 stitch before the centre. In this case, because it's 11 or 22 stitches, that's 11 each side, I want to actually work 10 stitches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this is the centre here, and you can usually find it fairly easily as it's where you go from one square to the other. And we knit those 2 stitches together, and that helps to close up any gap that may have formed when you were picking up stitches. And you just knit to the last stitch in the row, yarn forward, slip 1 purlwise. So that's row 2 of the single square pattern. You would now just continue to knit your normal square as before. Your centre, your decrease mitre, will be coming up here in line with the square below. So if I just bring this one back, again you can see that these were the previous squares, and I'm knitting this square now, the equivalent of this square, where the bottom edge, which are the picked up stitches, will form a right angle for 2 sides of the square once the square is completed. Just move those bits out of the way. So that's putting a square between 2 existing squares.